Hi, so here we are at part 2 of the Life Pizza Work-Life Balance. So last time we went through, if you're coming to part 2 without going to part 1, go to part 1 first. We went through the Life Pizza, we evaluated each of these sections out of 10, and we planned and prioritized which ones we were going to work on. And so let's have a look at the sorts of things that you can do. These are all P words, by the way, because it's a hook that you can hang the concepts onto. So we have pondered and pinpointed our life pizza, and we're going to look at perceptions today, because the filter through which we see everything that happens to us is called our perception. And everybody's perception is different. You know, 3 people see a car accident and the police will go and interview the 3 different witnesses, and you get 3 completely different accounts. Now, each person is being absolutely truthful, but they have completely different perceptions. So they see things from a different point of view. So this is an opportunity for you to examine your perceptions, to become an observer of your perceptions, which are really the stories you tell yourself. And those stories become beliefs. And there's kind of a B3 formula that I've been playing with lately, and that is believe that you are, believe that you can, and believe that you will. And if you start to think about those, when we look at believe that you are what? Well, most people don't feel that they're good enough and don't feel that they're worth loving. And so what we believe we are is some kind of not very deserving person who's crummy and isn't lovable and will never be lovable. And because this happened to me as a child, there are 3 core fears, which I'll quickly run through. I know I talk about them a lot, but they're so fundamental to everything. The first is I'm not worth loving, I'm not good enough. The second is I'm not safe in some way. And the third is I'm separate, I don't belong, I don't fit in. Now, if you have any of those, I got the trifecta. If you have any of those, they will alter your perceptions. And that's what you will believe you are. You will believe you're not worth loving. I told myself I was worthless. Now remember, these are stories we tell ourselves, and we know from epigenetics, these are embedded by the time we're 7. So it isn't what someone else tells us necessarily. It's what we as a toddler tell ourselves. So, and the second one, if you believe that you're unsafe, everything you do in life is going to be filtered through that belief, I'm not safe. Every action you take, every perception you make, everything, every choice you make, every decision you make will be based on the deep-rooted but unconscious fear that you're not safe, or that you don't belong and you don't fit in. So part of, even though you would never think this has something to do with work-life balance, think about it. If you truly believe that you're not good enough, if you as a child told yourself a story that you're not good enough, then you spend the rest of your life trying to be good enough, and that's often where perfectionism comes in. Or you give up and you just never try anything. You just go sit in a corner. And so it's really critical in this second part 2, have a look at the beliefs that are running your perceptions. Because if you don't believe you're good enough, if you don't believe you're worth loving, if you don't believe you're safe at work, if you don't believe that you belong or you fit in, how is that going to affect your performance, another word, P word, performance at work and in every other aspect of your life pizza? It's going to make sure that if you're a perfectionist, that you drive yourself nuts and probably everybody else nuts, and that you never stop. If you don't feel safe, let's say your boss, unless you are the boss, remember this is the impact you have on others' bosses. If your boss stays enormous numbers of hours at work, then everybody else feels they have to, unless they feel good about themselves and they've set boundaries, and they give themselves permission, P word, big P word, to take care of themselves, to get their work done, and then to break and allow a balance of home life. But, for those filled with fear, like I was, if you had a boss that stayed there till 7 o'clock every night, you didn't leave for fear that the boss would think you weren't working hard enough. So do you understand how those stories we've told ourselves impact everything that we do? So if you want to understand the stories, the trick is to work out, what story did I tell myself? Then work out, when did it start? And you don't have to dive in and relive hideous experiences. But when I say to you, well, when did that story start? You might sit there in the beginning and go, well, I don't know. But you'll work on to, and some random memory will pop into your head and you'll get a sense of when you told yourself that story. And then the third part that David Martin, my friend and mentor, gave me is to ask yourself, who benefited from the toddler telling themselves this story? And in my case, I told myself I was worthless. I told myself I wasn't good enough. I told myself I was responsible for my mother's happiness. I told her I was terrified, and I never belonged or fitted in, it seemed. So how did that work in my life? Well, it meant that I pushed myself, another P word I hadn't thought of. I pushed myself to extraordinary limits. I made sure I topped every year at school, at university, and in my career. I've won awards. Now, in some ways, of course, that's been beneficial. But in other ways, it wasn't so good, because I focused so much on work and pushing myself, and I'd push other people in relationships. And, it just doesn't play out so well if you live by pushing and forcing yourself and people to do things. So that's part of what I did. But my parents benefited because I was Miss Goody Two-Shoes. I did everything perfectly because I was responsible for her happiness, and I was trying to be perfect and all of those sorts of things, if you can relate to that. And so have a look at the stories you've been telling yourself, because they become the beliefs, and we want to bust those beliefs and ask yourself, what do you really believe you are? Because the truth is, you're an astonishing being of light. We don't have time to go into that here. Have a look at some of my other videos. But you are an astonishing being of light. And the truth is that you are worth loving. You are absolutely worth loving. Just by being human, you're worth loving. But there are many, many things about you that are worth loving. And you are good enough, which doesn't mean you can't grow, develop, be more, learn more. I'm constantly learning. I love to learn. And you are safe. Now, unless you're in some kind of abusive relationship, or you're walking down a dark alleyway and somebody's behind you with a knife, 99.9% of the time in the Western world, we're safe. But we have this inner terrified child. We're toddlers walking around in grown-up bodies. And then, you do belong, you do fit in. Perhaps not with every group. Perhaps you need to look for a different friendship group, or find a different group of spiritual people that you can hang out with, or a different type of spirituality. But you're never separate. We know, just if you want to look at the science level, quantum physics, you are never separate, never. We are all connected all the time. Think. You haven't heard from Mary or John for 2 weeks, and that's really unusual. And you think, oh, wait, I haven't heard from Mary or John. That's really unusual. And then what happens? Either that afternoon, evening, or the next day, you hear from Mary and John, because we are all connected all the time. We're just not conscious of it. So that's part 2 of the Life Pizza. I didn't get through nearly as much as I thought I would, but we'll come back to the planning and the prioritizing in the next video, part 3. So look for it, stay tuned.
Always look on